Hi guys, it is and welcome to the workshop. Today we are going to be making a schoolgirl skirt, hence the teacher cosplay. If you guys are interested in other cosplays that I work on or would like to check out the photo shoot in which I wear this, make sure to check out my Instagram.com/lpastel. As always, I stream a lot of my crafting live on Twitch other than to this tutorial for whatever reason, but make sure to follow me on twitch.tv/lpastel if you ever have any questions that you would like answered live. And here we go! First things first, let's go over materials. So, of course, sewing essentials, scissors, sewing machine, little clippies. I'll show you my clips. I like these. They came in a little box, and you have these little clips. They're nice. Sorry about the dog, he's yawning. They don't hold things in place very well on your dress form, but they're really nice for pleated things. And I got this new thing today. I ran out of my chalk marker, so I bought a new one. I thought I would show it off. This is from Madame Sew. And this is what it looks like. I'm excited. It looks pretty nice. Oh. Test swatch time. Yeah, that's super nice. So there's this little metal scroll wheel, and it looks like it touches this powdered chalk that's on the top and makes this really thin line. This is going to be really nice for more detailed sewing patterns where you really need to have a precise line. I'm very pleased with this purchase. 10 out of 10 recommend. Hashtag sponsored maybe, yay! Okay, anyway. Next, of course, you have your tape measure, and I like to use this measuring board. I don't know what it's called. Measuring board to mark out some things on my fabric. And string to match the fabric color. And of course, your fabric. I recommend using, sorry, this is very loud. I recommend using satin. I think it has a really nice sheen to it, and it also irons really well. You can also use various pattern fabric. What am I saying? What am I thinking of? Rather than doing like pumpkin spice season, plaid. Flannel is also nice to make these skirts out of, but you'll probably want to put a little bit of a liner in the belt when using flannel. For cosplay style schoolgirl skirts, most of the times they have a ribbon strip, so you're going to want a ribbon as well, which I forgot to buy the RV. Oh! So, I went to the store, which should only be 3 minutes away, and the line should be very quick. Whenever I go, there's never anyone there because no one knows it exists, right? I go there, there's like 30 people in line. I'm number maybe 15, and this lady has her 4 little toddlers up above, and I'm all for education, teaching experience, teacher cosplay, you know, but she was letting them pay individual receipts, paying in quarters, and it's been one of those days. Shall we move on? You're gonna want your ribbon to put on the very edge of your fabric, and make sure you have a string that matches the ribbon color that you want. First things first, let's take some measurements. What you're gonna want to do is take your measuring tape and put it on your waistline, right where you want your skirt to sit. Some people like their skirt to sit right under their rib cage, that's fine. Or this skirt, I want it to sit at the wide part of my hips. And then you're going to take that measurement and divide it in 2. So for me that is 15. And make sure to write down these numbers. You can measure yourself every time, but it's kind of annoying. Even on your dress form, to make a little note on tape of what your measurements are. Take your fabric and lay it out nicely, and then you're going to want to mark 15 inches on, or whatever your measurement is, on the wrong side of your fabric. Make sure never to mark on the right side of your fabric, because sometimes the chalk doesn't react very well with the fabric. It's supposed to be wash off, but sometimes it doesn't work 100% and you might run into some issue. So make sure to draw on the wrong side. Take this. I like this because it has a nice straight line and it doesn't get wobbly, so you know for sure that you're going to have a straight measurement. Make sure not to get any of this bumpy side thing that they use so that it doesn't unravel with the fabric, so make sure to cut that out, because it's not the prettiest. Usually it's about a 1/2 inch from the edge of the fabric. And then once you mark that out, you're going to want to add an inch so that you can have a 1/2 inch rolled seam on each side. So all together it'll be your waist measurement divided by 2 plus 1. Don't forget. So where that line is, you're going to want to fold the fabric in half. And then we're going to want to do you can do whatever thickness you want, but I think 2.5 inches looks the best. So, but you're going to want to fold it over. I like 2 inches, so 4 inches, 4 inches, 4 inches, okay? We're making this up as we go. I'm kind of, I'm thinking out the costume exactly how I need and designing it as I go. Which is probably not the best thing for a tutorial, but this is what you're getting. I just did my nails yesterday, they're very long, but now I can't pick up this thing. Make sure your line is super straight. I like this clicky noise, it's very satisfying. Let's need to spray chalk a little bit, but that's okay. Put that aside, and now let's cut it out carefully. For very straight lines, I like to use this sewing pizza cutter. I don't know what they're actually called. I just call it a sewing pizza cutter.
Rotary tool.
Yes, it's called a rotary tool. Thank you. And for if you want to look it up on the internet. If you want to be a cool kid, just call it a sewing pizza cutter. We're going to take this and cut out this edge first. Make sure to cut out that edge. And I usually like to keep my marker down and peel the part that I'm not going to use away, because sometimes it doesn't cut completely through the first time. You're supposed to do this on a craft mat, but I don't know where mine is. So, well, I do. It's in the other room. I just don't want to stand up right now because I'm feeling extremely lazy. This is such a terrible tutorial. Oh my god. Okay, so now you're going to want to take this and cut it right in half. And there you go, we have our waistline. Easy peasy. Now we're going to work on the pleated part. For this, you're going to want to take that waist measurement that you had, divided by 2, and you're going to want to multiply it by 3. And this is because of the pleat that we're going to do. So for me, that's 45 inches. And you're going to want to figure out the height that you want it. For me, that happened to be about 15 inches, but you can make it however tall you want. And make sure to add 1/2 inch for a rolled seam at the bottom. And for these long pieces, sometimes if it doesn't land exactly on an ironed portion, I like to clip it so that I don't lose the position of how long it's supposed to be. Since we need 2 sides, I like to just cut them out at once because it's easier that way. You can cut it out separately if you'd like, but it's not necessary. May have bought a little too much, honestly, but it's never a bad thing to have a stash of fabric. I probably messed that up, but that's fine. Okay, now draw a straight line. For this, because it's such a long piece, I'm just going to use my scissors. I think it might end up going a little smoother. Whoops. Oh my goodness. And we'll just make sure that it's 15.5 as we go along, just in case. Because you might mess up. So it's good to measure twice, cut once, right? Perfect. Try to make this as straight as possible, but it doesn't have to be like 100%. Don't stress, you know, it's handmade. It'll look fine once you iron it. It's all good. It's all good. Okay. Finally. Let's put this aside for now because I think we've got everything cut out that we need. Step 2. Cut this in half. Lengthwise. I suggest leaving the clips on because it just keeps everything pre-measured, I guess. You could mark the line, go and do it exact. That's probably what you should do. Or you could just make sure to hold this side firmly so that it doesn't get messed up, and keep your scissors as flat as possible so it's as even as possible. They might be a little messed up. It's fine. It's fine. Don't worry. We're gonna cover this ugliness up. The beauty of these skirts is you can just make another one, right? That's really terrible advice. That's such a waste. Make your skirt first before you make your accessories, because then you can always use the pieces that you messed up for your accessories. So now you need to decide which side you want on the front. For me, I think I want the shiny side on the front. Do I want the shiny side or the dull side? I like the shiny side. A lot of times they'll tell you in cosplay, like, stay away from shiny, blah, blah, blah. But I don't know. I kind of like shiny. Don't get cheapy. Get like a nice satin. Don't get like the $3 satin. Get like the $8 satin. But I think it looks nice. Whatever you want, honestly. Cosplay is just whatever you want. So, put the two sides you want on the outside together. So you're hiding them, right? See, I've left a little bit of this bumpy part on the bottom, but that's gonna be fine because we'll put that on the, that on the top. We'll put that on the top. The top's gonna be hidden about 2 inches in with your waistline, so we'll put that side on the top. So pin them together. Now you're gonna wanna move on to your sewing machine and sew these with a 1/4 inch seam. Well, it depends on how you wanna close your seams, I guess. I'm probably just going to put bias tape along the edge to close it. You could also roll it. You could do a French sleeve. You can do a lot of things. However you want it to look, whatever's most comfortable. I think the bias tape is the most comfortable, so that's what I prefer to do. It's kind of a little bit more of a pain, but oh, put your thread first. Make sure the foot is up before you try and take this out, because you won't be able to take it out. So, take the color that you want to match. Stick it here. If you already have a bobbin, perfect, wound, but if not, make sure to add some so that there's not an obvious, I mean, you can make it a different color if you want, but I just think it's kind of ugly. But who knows, maybe stylistic choice, right? If it's the same color, you won't notice crooked lines as much, so there's that. Wow. This is a disaster. Make sure your foot's plugged in. Make sure to hold this. Mine tends to get caught on the bottom, so I just like to stick my finger here so it doesn't get caught up. Ah! For some reason it got undone from here, so we have to unroll it. Okay, so if that happens, just hold the thread out here, put your finger here, and keep it. It might kind of rub your fingers a little bit, I don't know, if you have sensitive fingers. The very top part, you can kind of clip it out if it's getting tangled. You can kind of wait for it to recatch. There you go. Good enough. Usually there's a little blade in here, you can just trim it. Whoop! Whoop! Stick it in. Wind it up. You know the drill. If you don't, you should by now. I should probably have made a sewing intro video first. We'll do that at some point. Oh, first you gotta thread the top. Can't forget that. Some of these newer machines have these auto threaders, which are nice sometimes, but just I like the good old fashioned way. Okay. Here we go. Make sure to backstitch a few times. Sometimes it's easier to make sure all your fabric is on the table so that your sides stay even and it's not pulling down. Make sure not to pull your thread or your fabric too much, because depending on the type of fabric, it can stretch one side. So just put a gentle pressure when you sew. Wow, that's going very slowly. Usually you can adjust your sewing speed on your machine. Plug in your iron. Make sure it doesn't trip your breaker if you live in a really terrible house that has wiring that was done by a 4-year-old. Okay, hello. Don't let your cats touch your iron. You can use an ironing board or you can just use a towel. I like just using like a kitchen towel. Stick it on a hard surface. And we're going to take this and draw out a line. So on the wrong side of your fabric, we're going to do something. Oh, this is Morty. He's very curious. He loves to sit exactly where I am doing stuff. Because why not? So let's take this board again. Move this aside. Sorry, I got ahead of myself. Sir! Take our marker. And you're gonna want to mark at the 1/2 inch. Oh my god. Ow! Really? Just... Can you guys see what I'm doing? I wish you could. There we go, thank you. So now, let's close the seam. I'm going to use bias tape like I said before because it's a little bit more comfortable for me personally. I'm going to measure this out. It'll be the height of your thing is 15 inches and usually you want a little bit of wiggle room with bias tape, so we're going to make a 17-inch bias tape. And here's what a bias tape maker looks like. This is also bias tape. You can get this at any sort of fabric store. It's basically pre-ironed and folded and strung out for you. You can use this. It's on the inside. You won't be able to see it. You can use a complementary color. It might be kind of cute, but I want it to kind of be hidden, so I'm going to make my own. And this is how you make it. 12 plus 15 is 17. Okay. I can math, guys. So, the way that this little contraption works is that you feed a tiny piece of fabric into one side and it comes out folded on the other side, right? So you're gonna kind of have to think and do some math. This is a 12mm bias tape maker, so what I want is, we're just gonna convert that to inches. It's roughly 1/2 inch. And you're gonna wanna double that because it's gonna fold over on each side and meet in the middle. So we're gonna want a 1-inch piece. And then once you reach the edge of your thing, just kind of draw a little triangle slash because it's easier to feed in that way. And cut this out. This doesn't have to be super precise because, again, it's gonna be ironed down. But the more precise it is, the better it'll be, so it's up to you. Okay. Now that you have a piece like this, you're going to want to take the right side out and put it on the bottom and feed it into this piece. This is why you're going to want that triangle piece. It's just easier to grab out of this front. And if you pull it, it starts to fold over like this. Now you're just going to take your iron and feed it through and press. It's easier if you grab this with your hand and kind of pull with your fingers. There's also a method where you can stick it on an ironing board and put a pin through it, but I've never tried that method. If you mess up, just iron it out flat again. Double check and make sure that this doesn't get flipped around when you feed it in initially. You want to make sure that the two right sides are getting folded onto each other. They have a tendency to get a little mixed up. It's not quite pressing out fully. You can either leave it pressed for a little bit longer or put a little bit of steam. Okay. Now let's iron with the two sides meeting in the middle. You're just going to want to press this further and hide the unfinished pieces on the inside in half. Okay, now that you have this piece of bias tape, we're going to go back to our skirt on this raw edge that we have on the middle, we're gonna sew this tape down on each side and lock it in. I just like to clip these in a few spots so you have a good, well, don't clip the top, clip the bottom and the middle so you have a good guiding line. Okay, put this in our sewing machine. And start sewing. Make sure that your sewing is as close to the edge of the bias tape as possible while still catching both sides in it, if that makes sense. You can adjust where your needle hits, usually on most machines. It will differ with your machine, so I'm not going to show that, but there should be ways to figure out how to adjust the space of where the needle hits. Now that you're done with that, make sure to clip the excess. Now, you're going to want to open up the seam and lay your bias tape to one side and iron it closed. Whichever side you think looks neater, you can have that on the outside. And it's important to iron at every step of the way because it locks in your stitch. And putting this to one side is going to be really important for our next step. Next step is to take that line that we drew earlier and iron our fabric along the line. And this is going to be our bottom rolled seam. So we're going to take the edge and match it up to that line that we drew. And this is going to take a while, so maybe we can Now that we have this nice and ironed, we're going to go back to our sewing machine. And this nice clean edge that we have here, we're going to roll it again. That way you have this nice clean edge that you're sewing on top of. And you'll hide all the raw edges inside. Sew as close to the top of this roll as possible. It'll just be a lot neater that way. What? Make sure to go really carefully around this inner seam bump. Be really careful because it can stop up your needle. See, you just have to go super slow. And always back stitch at the end. Cut your thread. Some machines have a little cut thread button, it's very nice. If not, pop it up and cut it. Now that we have this, as always, give it a quick iron to lock in the stitch. Make sure if there's any like little pieces of thread that are hanging off that you trim those. And we're gonna move on to the next step. Okay, and now that we've got that ironed, let's move on to our ribbon real quick. So open your ribbon up. What did I get? You can get any size you want. I got this, what is that, like 1/4 inch, I think, roughly, size ribbon. Don't ever use your sewing scissors to open plastic. Always get a different pair of scissors. These are also sewing scissors, but they're fine. They're retired. So now that we have this, let's figure out a good spot to place it. For this step, you're gonna probably want to bust out your pins. I don't use them that often, so they're kind of a dusty mess. They're covered in paint. It's a whole thing. Anyway, let's take our ruler and start placing this ribbon exactly where we want it. I think I want mine about 2 inches up from the bottom. So let's lay it out. Don't be discouraged if it takes you a long time. This is a short-ish video, but I'm definitely editing this down, and it definitely took me at least, I want to say, 4 hours to make the first skirt that I made. But that's with all of my other sewing experience, so don't be afraid to take your time. It will always turn out nicer the more attention to detail and time that you take. Granted, with a costume, it's not super important. I make so many costumes that sometimes you kind of have to decide what level of professionalism you want for each piece. For example, if it's a skirt and you're going to cover it with a lot of frilly details, don't take too much time making the skirt, make it good enough, and you can always go back and rip some seams and redo it if you want to. Okay, and now that we have that done, you can clip it if you want, but sometimes I don't like to clip it because, I don't know, I can run into some issues if I do. It's a whole thing. Let's double check that we're at 2 inches. Oh, we're not. Cool, 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 cool. Of course, I measured all of this wrong probably. GGL, Why am I making a tutorial when I'm fucking trash? Oh. Now, we're going to want to top stitch this down. So when we top stitch, we're going to want to make sure to change out our thread to one that matches the color of our ribbon. But the bottom, we're going to keep that as the same color so that it's hidden to the back. You can switch it out to white if you want. I like it to be hidden. We're going to want to top stitch each side. Oh, let's start with the other side. Oh my goodness, I'm so hungry. Can you hear my stomach? I'm sorry. It's almost time to take a break. When you go over the center, make sure that the bias tape is still facing the same side that you ironed it down. And be very careful, again, because this area is kind of thick. So go slow. Go. Going and going and going forever. There we go. Make sure to take it out and cut the excess. Now we're going to flip it over and sew the other side. Finally done. Okay, now we're going to give it a quick iron and be ready for part 2. I'm gonna do an iron later. Honestly, I'm starving. So let's just fold it up nicely. I'm gonna take a break and we'll be back soon. All folded up. This is what you should have right now. The start to a pleated skirt. It looks gigantic, but don't worry, it'll all work out in the end. If you guys would like to see how I finish this, make sure to like and subscribe. As always, check out my Instagram, Twitter, Twitch, all of the things. You can also check out a lot of my YouTube music videos in the description down below. Thank you so much, guys. I will see you all next time. Good luck and happy crafting!